with messages, whether it's mine or whoever's up here, or something that might be said during a service that touches your heart. It's so hard to try to remember stuff, is it not? And you get in a battle and you're like, oh, what did he say? What was it that God was saying that night? And I can't remember what it was, but if you write it down, some of y'all can use your phones, that's fine. But if you can write it down, it helps to look back on notes and stuff, and that's helped me out a lot, especially hearing that at youth camp. But let's go to 1 Kings, and we're going to go to 18. 18, and we're going to begin with verse 33. And then we're going to flip over to 2 Kings. 1 Kings, beginning with verse 33, chapter 18. I don't think I told you all the chapter. 1 Kings 18, chapter 18, verse 33. If y'all got it, somebody say amen. Amen. And he put the wood in order and cut the bullock, which is the bull, in pieces and laid him on the wood. And said, fill 4 barrels with water and pour it on the burnt sacrifice and on the wood. In verse 34, he said, do it the second time, and they did it the second time. And he said, do it the third time, and they did it the third time. And the water ran around about the altar. And he filled the trench also with water. So the altar was full, and also the trench was full of water. Verse 36, and it came to pass at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice that Elijah the prophet came near and said, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known that this day that thou art God in Israel, and that I am thy servant, and that I have done all these things at thy word. Yeah. Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that thou art the Lord God, and that thou hast turned their heart back again. Yeah. Then the fire of the Lord fell, and this is verse 38, and the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice and the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up the water that was in the trench. Yeah. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and they said, the Lord, He is the God. The Lord, He is the God. Yeah. And then we're going to go to 2 Kings. 2 Kings chapter 4. And I want us to start with verse 3. 2 Kings chapter 4. And I'm going to flip between these two stories tonight. So y'all just, if you can put your little bookmark or something to hold your spot. 2 Kings chapter 4, beginning with verse 3. Then he said, go outside and borrow vessels from all your neighbors. Not just any vessel, he said, empty vessels, and not too few. Then go in and shut the door behind yourself and your sons, and pour into all these vessels. And when one is full, set it aside. So she went from him and shut the door behind herself and her sons. And as she poured, they brought the vessels to her. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, bring me another vessel. And he said to her, there is not another. Then the oil stopped flowing. She came and told the man of God, and he said, go sell the oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on the rest. Let's pray now. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you tonight. Lord, we just want to dig into your word. God, we've already felt your presence through the worship. God, I pray as each student sits here tonight and in their seats, as they sit there and their heart is moving, their mind is moving tonight, God. Lord, I just pray that you just clear their mind, clear their hearts for this word tonight. God, that you would speak to them, a word of encouragement, God, a word of promises, because your word is promises to us, God, that we can lean on in times of trouble. It's a promise that we can always turn to, God, that you're always there for us. God, and I praise you tonight. I just ask you to touch us in Jesus' name. Amen. So in 2 Kings chapter 4, we're going to stay there for a little bit. If y'all have heard the story, this is of the widow that she lost her husband, And now she is basically almost bankrupt, and all she has left is a little jar of oil. That's it. And we know that she had 2 sons, and the creditor, which is the tax collector, he's coming to collect the taxes, and she doesn't have answers. She doesn't have answers for the situation. She doesn't have answers for the circumstance she's in. And there's a knock at the door, and she's not ready for it. And they're about to take her 2 sons, the only thing she has, because all she has is a jar of oil. And so tonight I want to talk about that. How many, the title of my sermon, I couldn't even think of a title tonight. And God spoke this to me. It said, title it this. And it says, Empty with Only an Altar. Empty with only an altar. How many knows it hurts to feel empty? It hurts to feel empty. It hurts to have emptiness in your heart, to have emptiness in your mind, to not know. Emotionally, spiritually, to be spiritually empty. How many's ever been there before spiritually? I have. Where you just feel like you've emptied the tank and you forgot to stop at the gas station and fill back up. And now you're stuck on the side of the road, your tank's empty, and you're wondering, where am I going to go from here? What do I turn to? What's my solution? We are vulnerable, confused, and desperate in a time of emptiness. And there's a woman in this Bible that is going through the same situations. That's going through a time of emptiness. She has nothing in her house. She has nothing that she can look at and say, this will work. She has nothing. And she looks at it and says, all I have is this jar of oil. And Elijah says, well, go and go and borrow some empty vessels. And I want us to look at that because in verse 3, empty is the key word in this story. Yes, there was a jar of oil, but empty is the key word, and emptiness is the key word. The prophet did not tell her to go and try and borrow food from her neighbors. Would that not have been the easy way out? Is to borrow food from the neighbor? Why try to borrow something that is empty? That's not helping her out. So she's going and borrowing these empty vessels. Instead of going and borrowing money, she could have borrowed money from somebody. She could have got some food from somebody else, a neighbor. But instead, Elijah says, go and get more emptiness. Yeah, well. And it doesn't make sense to this woman. Why would I leave where I'm at, which is already empty? I have no answers. And you want me to strive for more emptiness? Think about that tonight. And so the woman, it would have been so easy, guys, to turn to something materialistic. Food, money. Yeah. Guys, it's so easy when you're in a time of emptiness to turn to things that aren't the right thing. To turn to things, drugs, alcohol, whatever the case may be. You can put anything in that blank there instead of going for what God wants you to go for. And so Elijah tells her, he said, your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil. And then he said, go outside and borrow vessels from all your neighbors. Not borrow food, not borrow money, borrow empty vessels, and not too few. Then go in and shut the door behind yourself and your sons and pour into all these vessels. So she's got these empty vessels. And it was like the prophet Elijah was saying, lady, you've got a lot of emptiness in your house. I can just walk in right now and I can see that your cupboards are empty. I can see that your shelves are empty and there's all these jars that are empty. But the only thing I see that is left is a jar of oil. And so he says, go and get more vessels. And so he's filling her with more emptiness. It's confusing. It's confusing. But God has a plan for your emptiness. Somebody say, God has a plan for your emptiness. So gather together some more emptiness is what he basically said. He said, go back to your empty house, your empty cupboards, and close the door behind you and those two boys that are about to be emptied out of your house. And I want you to see what God can do with emptiness. Because, see, the state she was in when the creditors came, she was not fully empty yet. But now she's in a place where she has absolutely nothing but this oil, and she has a bunch of empty jars. Guys, right now tonight, you have a bunch of empty jars. You have a bunch of questions. You have a bunch of concerns. You have a bunch of circumstances right now in your life that you don't know the answers to. But there's some oil. There's something that can fill those vessels tonight. You see, the story continues. She set out all those empty jars and vessels. She took her little jar of oil, and poured it into one of those empty jars. And it was filled full. And yet her little jar wasn't empty. So she filled the second. She filled the third. She filled the fourth. And y'all know the story. She kept filling them until it was full. And she turned to her sons and she said, hand me another jar. And the sons said, there's not another jar. They're all full. And God filled every jar full of oil. Guys, tonight, we are put in a spiritual circumstance in our lives where we can leave those jars empty, or we can begin to seek God for the oil. We can begin to seek God for the oil in our lives to begin to keep pouring that can fill the jars that we don't have answers to. And so tonight I want us to pledge to that we're going to be like this woman. We've got some emptiness in our hearts. We've got some emptiness. You might be going through something right now. It could be a secret sin. And you are empty and alone. And nobody knows about it. Nobody knows what's going on in your life. But God knows. And God is a merciful God. And God is ready to pour His oil out into your life. And you say, no, it's just empty. There's a little bit of oil left. And that will not fill what I need filled. That will not fill all these jars that I have. It's not going to work, God. But it will work. You've got to trust Him. And He'll fill those jars for you tonight. You see, I believe that God not only works in mysterious ways, but God is a God that can take nothing and turn it into something. Yeah. God is a God that can take something and turn it from bad to good. I believe that because God spoke and He created the heavens and the earth. So there was nothing and God created something. God hung the stars on nothing. Think about that tonight, guys. God took the stars you look at and He hung them on nothing. That's how incredible our God is, that He can take something that looks like there's nothing left and make something beautiful out of it. He can. And I believe that. Spiritually, if you're not experiencing God's presence in your life like you desire, it may be that you're not empty enough. You say, Pastor Daniel, what are you talking about? Like, I feel like I'm empty. I feel like that I'm at my lowest point in my life spiritually. I can't hear God. I just don't feel His presence. And I feel like that's somebody tonight. But if you're not experiencing God's presence, then as I say you're not empty enough, that means there's something in there that needs to come out. There's something in there that needs to come out. And God wants to fill your vessel with oil, but He can't fill a dirty vessel. He can't fill an unclean vessel. And it needs to be a clean vessel. And so, for you guys tonight that might be struggling with something, I don't know what it may be. It could be something that is so secret that nobody knows about. We all struggle with different things. But if you don't empty that out, then there will always be something in the way for the oil to be pouring into. And until you get that out, until you empty it out and give it to God, then He will begin to pour the oil into your life. Somebody give God a hand clap of praise tonight. I believe God is about to move. Matthew 11:28, it says, "Then Jesus said, 'Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest.'" Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, who are heavy laden, who are carrying a burden. But here's the thing. How can He carry your burden if you keep holding on to it? How can He carry something that you don't give to Him? How can He carry something for you and give you rest if you can't give it to Him? Tonight, God is ready. God is able to take whatever it is in your life and give you rest. But we've got to be able to give it to Him. We can't carry it. We can't carry it. We can't carry our heavy burdens. We've got to give it to Him for rest. It says in John 6, and y'all don't have to flip there. I'll tell you all the story. There's about 5,000 people, roughly. And they're on this hill, and Jesus is talking to them, and they're following Him, and they're all hungry. And they're empty. And Jesus looks at the disciples, and they kind of look like, what are we going to do? Because these people are empty. They have nothing to eat. They're starving. And there's only a couple things that we can do. There was actually 4 things that were offered up to do in John chapter 6. There's about 15,000 plus stomachs that are needing to be fed. And first the disciples said, this is the first one out of the 4. The disciples said, "Let us get rid of the problem and tell them to go away." Let us get rid of the problem and tell them to go away, Jesus said. That's not it. They'll faint on the way home. They're running on empty. And that's not exactly word for word what He said. But Jesus said, we can't let these people go, because on their way home, they're going to faint because they're running on empty. And the disciples couldn't see spiritually what Jesus was seeing. The disciples said, let us, get rid of the problem. Let us get rid of it and tell them to go away. Sometimes it's easy to just try to get rid of your problems. Be real with y'all tonight. Sometimes it's easy to just try to forget your problems. But as the disciples right here learn that you can't just get rid of an empty problem or question. You can't get rid of it. You've got to give it to God. And God will fill that void. Second, Philip said, let's just raise some money. He did some figuring and found it to take 200 wages to buy enough bread and money, or enough bread to feed everyone that was there. Are y'all following me tonight? And so he's trying to find a material solution for a spiritual problem. And so he's looking at it and saying, well, you know what? If we just have more money, we'll be all right. If I just get more of this, then my problem will go away. But really, Jesus is saying, you are missing it the whole time. The solution, you're talking to the solution. You're coming to me with all these suggestions, but really, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And he's trying to get them to realize that. This is the third one. Andrew found a little boy with a small lunch. And he said, it's not much, but it's a start. And think about Andrew, the faith he had to take a little boy's lunch. He's bullying him. He's taking a little boy's lunch. But he's seen something there. Just like that woman saw the oil. She saw it there. And she said, this might not be much, but it's a start. And Jesus said, no, it's plenty. You just don't see it the way I see it.
Come on, that's really good.
And so what looks like little to you guys, what looks like emptiness to you guys, God can feel it. God can feel it tonight. God can feel any void you have. God can feel any question you have. God can feel any concern, circumstance, anything you have. You can turn to this Word of God right here, and He can feel it tonight with His precious oil, with His precious Holy Spirit. And that's what we need tonight. Number 4, Jesus had the true solution as He took the little boy's lunch and demonstrated that little is much when God is in it. It looks like little, but when God placed His hand on it, it was much. 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9 says, Paul said this, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Say this with me. Say, my power, which is his power. Say, his power is made perfect in my weakness. And now we could say it like this. Say, his power is made perfect in my emptiness. Because emptiness, weakness, is the same. Because we're trying to do something that we're not called to do. We're trying to do something that we cannot handle it spiritually. So we have got to turn to our Heavenly Father. We've got to turn like they did to Jesus. And he said, my grace is sufficient for you. You don't see it the way I see it. I can supply all your needs. I can give you life and life more abundantly tonight. We serve a Lord that specializes in filling emptiness tonight. Come on, somebody lift him up tonight. We serve a God that it doesn't matter what the circumstance is, that he can fill the void, he can fill whatever's going on in your life, because his love is enough. The cross was enough. Guys, the blood that you just sang about tonight is enough, because his blood that he shed on Calvary is the reason we can stand here tonight and worship him. The reason we can stand here tonight and look to his word is only because the precious blood of Jesus. And when I look at that oil, I see the blood. I see the blood. And I don't know what's going on in my life. You know, like sometimes I don't know what's going on, and I ask God, what's the answer? And God said, just look to my blood. Just look to me. But God, there's so much emptiness. I can't do it. No, just look to me. Don't worry about it, and I will fill those jars that you think will never be filled. Intimacy with Christ. I want to share with y'all this, and then we're going to flip over to 1 Kings. Intimacy with Christ is poured into a vessel that has been, number one, emptied of sin. Number two, emptied of self. And number three, emptied of substitutes. So if you really want the intimacy of God to be poured into your life and into your vessel right now, number one, emptied of sin. Number two, emptied of yourself. You say, what does that mean? What does that mean to be emptied of ourselves? It means that when we wake up in the morning, we choose to crucify the flesh. We choose to crucify what our desires are. We choose to crucify what we would want to do today. And say, God, let it be your will for my life. What would you have me to do today? And so we crucify, we empty ourselves, and we empty any substitutes that we turn to instead of turning to the Lord. That can be anything. That can be your phone. That could be TV. That could be drugs, alcohol. That could be sex. Anything you turn to that is more important and has more authority over your life than the Lord is a substitute.
Right.
It's like trying to drink sweet tea with Splenda. It don't work. It just don't taste good. Some of y'all been drinking Splenda for a long time. And y'all need to get on the real stuff.
Come on.
And get some Alabama sweet tea up in that Alabama. Oof, that's good stuff. It's good stuff. Y'all, let's go to 1 Kings. And we're gonna speed this up tonight. I've got an illustration. Y'all pray for me. Pray I don't spill something. I know, it's gonna get crazy. 1 Kings, let's start with chapter 17, and I'm gonna kind of run through this real quick. Elijah, how many knows this story? Elijah fed by the ravens. Crazy, I know. So Elijah is telling everybody that there's going to be this drought for about 3 years, and God told him that, and it will not rain until it comes out of Elijah's mouth that it will rain. So these people are like, great, we're going in a drought. So the drought has already started, and God tells Elijah in the middle of a drought, which a drought means that there's a lack of something, which means there's emptiness. They're empty, they have no water, or very little water. And he tells Elijah to go to the Jordan River, or beside the Jordan River, to this place, to the creek, and ravens will feed you. Now, if God told you that, how would you feel if you was Elijah? Think about that. Let's be in Elijah's shoes.
That's cool.
And he says, go to this creek, and I'm going to have ravens feed you meat and bread, and you're going to be all right. Everybody else might not be, but you're going to be all right. How would you look at God? What would you say? Are you serious? Like ravens?
How?
Could be like a dove or something. You're going to use ravens? And God said, yeah, I want to use something ugly to show you that I can bless you.
Come on.
I want to use something to show you that I'm sending you to a place, and you're saying, God, I don't want to go there.
Come on, that's good.
I don't want to go there.
Come on.
Ravens? The only thing I've ever seen a raven eat is something nasty. Something that's disgusting. And you're saying they're going to feed me? And God said, go.
Come on.
And the ravens fed him and blessed him. And so we look, he's still traveling. And it's amazing when God tells you to do something that you're not pleasant with. Anybody ever had to do that?
Oh, yeah.
God told you to do something. Hey, go witness to this person. And you're like, but they're a raven. Like, I don't talk to people like that. And God said, yes, you do. Because they're a child of God just like you are.
That's good. That's good.
I don't know about y'all, but God's told me to do some stuff before
Yeah.
that I was not comfortable with.
Yes, sir.
That it didn't look like it was going to turn out good for me. And in the end, I was blessed beyond measure.
Yes.
And I was fed by something that I looked at and thought, nothing good can come out of that. That's a raven. And God said, no, you don't see how I work. And I can bless you. So, it says, after a while, the brook dried up and there was no rainfall anywhere in the land. And so Elijah is traveling, and he gets to this widow of Zarephath. I guess that's the name of the village. Glad they don't have those villages in Alabama anymore. Near the city of Sidon. And he said, I have instructed a widow there to feed you. So here we go again. Elijah is traveling, and he said, I have instructed you that there's going to be a widow there to feed you. And he's probably thinking, okay, God, I trusted you the first time. I'm trusting you this time, that there will be something there for my emptiness. And so he said to the widow, would you please bring me a little water in a cup? And as she was going to get it, he called to her, bring me a bite of bread too. He was hungry. But she said, I swear by the Lord your God that I don't have a single piece of bread in the house. And I have only a handful of flour left in the jar and a little cooking oil in the bottom of the jug. And I was just gathering a few sticks to cook this last meal, and then my son and I will die. But Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go ahead and do just what you've said, but make a little bread for me first. Isn't it funny and think about this, if you was in the widow's situation, you have a little bit left, and somebody comes to you and they're God sent, and they tell you they need some food, and God's telling you give it to them. And you have nothing. Think about what the widow, her situation, to trust what Elijah was saying. And she had nothing left, and God said, give what you have. Give it, because it's going to bless him, but it's also going to return a blessing to you.
Yeah.
And she received, and they ate, and it said that there was plenty. And it said that the olive oil left in your containers until the time when the Lord sends rain and the crops will grow again. So she did as Elijah said, and she and Elijah and her family continued to eat for many days. Many days. And there was always enough flour and olive oil left in the containers, just as the Lord had promised through Elijah. And he promised that to her. And she was blessed because she gave what she had left. The very little bit that she had left, she gave it to somebody else. She ministered to somebody else, even though she was hurting. Even though she was holding on to just whatever was left, her little bit of sticks and her flour that was in her hands, she gave it and ministered to somebody else and witnessed to somebody else, knowing that she might not get that back. And God blessed her for many days to come. So 1 Kings 18, we get to the story of where the prophets of Baal are challenging Elijah. And y'all have heard this story before, and I want to demonstrate a little bit here, a little bit with these containers. But the prophets challenged Elijah and said that we can build an altar for our God, and you can build an altar for your God, and we'll see who sends fire down first from heaven. And so this was a challenge. So you've got one altar over here. I want y'all to picture this. You've got one altar built over here, and then you've got Elijah's altar that he is building. And so you've got over, 500 prophets against one. Against one man standing there, and you've got 500. And so what happens is, as they build their altar, and they begin praising God, and they're praising their God, and they're worshiping him, and they're crying out to him, send the fire, show that you are true, show that you are real. But the fire never came. And the fire was never there. And so it said that they began to cut themselves because they were so agonized because their God did not show up. Because their altar didn't work. The altar they built didn't work. And I want, if anybody's got the altar music ready, I think Seth, go ahead and begin that for me. So I want you guys to realize this. I want you guys to picture this spiritually. 500 people built an altar for a God that was not real. But why did they build that altar? What made them build that altar? Think about that. They believed in something that wasn't even there. They believed in something, they trusted in something that would never meet their need. And guys, sometimes we build altars in our lives with social media, with other friends, and we build this big altar and we look for answers that only God can give us, that only God can provide for us. Turn down just a little bit. That only God can provide for us, but we look to this altar instead of this altar. And so we turn to material things. We turn to other people. Some people turn to alcohol, and they turn to an altar that can never satisfy them. And that's what the prophets of Baal had realized. And so they kind of just gave up. And Elijah kind of mocked them and said, all right, now y'all watch this. And so he begins building his altar, and he puts the fire, and he cuts up the bull, and he puts the stones around it, and he takes his sweet time for God. And he puts the stones just perfect. But here's where it changes, guys. After that, he decided, I want to build a trench around my altar. And I'm going to fill it with water. Now you say, okay, he filled it with water. And he drenched the whole altar with water. And then fire came down and consumed it. Because we just read that at the beginning of the preaching. And so I want you guys to realize something. What were they in need of for 3 years? Water. They were in need of water for 3 years. They were in a drought. And they built this altar over here, and the last thing they wanted to give up for their altar was what? Water. Because that is what they needed at that moment. That's what they were holding on to. Guys, listen to me. I want you guys all to pay attention and look at me. God is about to do an amazing thing tonight. This is straight from God. They looked to that altar, but they could not give up something that they needed so bad. And it was water. They needed water. And so how much water do you think was left in the land? We don't know that. But we know that there was a drought, and Elijah got water from somewhere because he told him, go and get water. So that could have been the last bit of water that was in the town. And think about the prophets just looking at him and going, what are you doing? Why are you taking the water and pouring it on there? It didn't make sense. And Elijah said, but you don't understand my God. You don't understand how my God works. When I give him everything is when he shows up. When I give him everything that I have, even the things that I don't want to give up, even the things that I'm holding to and trying to say, God, that just don't make sense. Why would I give this up and give it to you? I can't do it. Because I need this. I need this. It could be a secret sin. It could be, I need this. I need it. You don't understand, God. Yes, he does. Give it to him. Give it to him. You're in a drought. And God says, give me what you have left and watch me work. Watch me work. So as he's doing that altar, I want you guys to realize, he's holding the water. He's about to pour it on his altar. Guys, you guys are looking for an altar to pour out what you have left. Every bit that's in your heart, it's in your mind right now, that God is working in your heart, and you're saying, I feel like there's nothing left. I feel like that all I have left is this little bit of water in my life. And I don't know the questions, I don't know the answers. When is it going to rain again? Because I don't want to give this up. Because God, is it going to rain again? Am I going to see good days? I don't want to give this up. You don't understand my sins that I carry every day, God. If I give these up, everybody will know who I am. God says, give it to me. Because when you get completely empty is when I'll begin to show myself and work in your life. And when he poured that water, it was like saying, God, I'm giving it to you. I don't understand it. I don't understand why I'm pouring this water, because it's something that I have held on to for so long. It's something, a sin. It's an addiction that I've held on to so long. It's grief. It's sorrow. It's pain. It's anger. And God, I don't want to give this up. And God says, just give it to me. And we always say, no, God, I can't give you that. When is it going to rain again? When is it going to rain again in my life? I'm in a drought right now, and you want me to give the one thing that I'm holding on to? And God says, once you let that go, you'll realize who you're holding on to. You're holding on to me. So guys, I want us to stand tonight. I want everybody to get in this altar right here. You have a choice tonight. You have a choice to pick which altar you're going to run to. Because you can run away from God and run away from your problems. And you can run away from what you're going through. Things you're going through. Some of y'all in here are going through hell right now. And you can run the other way, just like the prophets did. And they ran to a different altar for their satisfaction. And they never let go of what they couldn't let it go. And Elijah said, you know what? This is nothing to me. Because if I give this up and I give it to God and I trust God with all of my heart and lean not on my own understanding, then he will bless me. He will begin to bless my life, and fire will fall, and I will see God's presence in my life. I'll see God's presence in the altar that I have built for him. Some of y'all have built a life right now for God, and there's one thing missing. There's one thing missing. You've built this altar up, and you're living for God. You're living and as close as you can to God, and God says there's still something you've not given. It could be anger, it could be sadness, it could be anything, guys. And God says, if you do not give this to me, then it's hard for me to work. And as we see in the Bible, we see the jar, we see the empty jars, we see the oil. This represents the oil in our lives. What you have left right now, I challenge you. It's poured out of you, God. And yes, you will be empty. But when you become empty, God will fill you up. He will begin to fill you up. Guys, I want us to just lift our hands right now. Seth, can you give me a little more volume on the music? Guys, tonight, I don't know if this speaks to y'all, but it speaks to me because there's so many times that I feel empty in my life. I feel like I've been burnt out. I just ran completely out of energy, out of spiritual energy that I need to make it through. But God reminds me that there's still something in my life that I'm holding on to. There's something. God says, just give it. Just pour it out. I know you're broken. I know you're hurting. But there's an altar. And that altar is for you to pour out what you have left. And Elijah had water left, and that's what he poured out on the altar. And it did make sense to pour water on something that was about to catch fire. And in your life, it's not going to make sense to pour out what you have left and just give it to God, but you've got to. When you give it to God, He will begin to manifest Himself in your life more than you've ever seen before. You'll see the fire fall. You'll see it consume everything in your life. The stones, the wood, the rocks, the dust. It will consume everything in your life. And I don't know about y'all, but that's what I want. I want God to consume my life to where I have nothing left that I'm holding on to. I'm believing for everything. I want y'all to lift your hands, and I want y'all to begin worshiping. And I don't think that right now I need to pray for anybody. I don't think that I need to. I think you need to pray for yourself. I think you need to seek God and seek an altar right now where you're at. And begin to seek God with the water you have left. Whatever it is that you have left, that little bit, you just begin to pour it for God. Just like this. Just begin to pour it. And it's going to hurt. But just begin to pour it out to God. And as you feel yourself becoming empty, you're going to be more full than you've ever felt before. I believe that tonight. Oh, Holy Spirit, God, pour out your heart, pour out your love, God, your oil on our lives right now, God. Lord, in the emptiness, the brokenness, God, Lord, we give you everything tonight, God. We just pour out our lives, our questions, God.